This is PI Health with another video. Today's topic is going to be 380. Does the 380 actually qualify as an all-around handgun? Well now, let's start from the beginning. What do we mean by all-around handgun? Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, we have it right here. Does it qualify as a home defense? Does it qualify as a range gun? Does it qualify as a hunting backup? Does it qualify as an armed security? Or does it qualify as a CCW? That means a concealed carry weapon. Now let's look at it from the very beginning. We're looking at the 380 right here. And we are looking at the 380 to be exact. This is a 380X Cheetah. The 380X Cheetah designated actually as a handgun that I'm looking at where it qualifies as an all-around handgun. Okay, so let's look at it. First of all, let's look at the ballistics. The ballistics, as we know it, it's a buffalo bore, 90 grain, 1,200 feet per second, 288 energy. Now, the only thing that is missing from the 1,200 and 288 is actually the expansion of the bullet. That is not known. I do not know what's the expansion. I haven't measured it, nor do I have any information on this particular one. But the 90 grain, 1,200 feet per second, and the 288 does qualify as a man stopper, or somebody is trying to actually in a defensive situation. Okay, so as we're looking at it, for home defense, the answer is yes. Now, does it qualify as a range gun? That's where I have my problem. The reason that I have a problem with that is number 1, the ammunition is very expensive. The ammunition, that means approximately about $25 to $35 per box. That to me does not qualify as a range gun because of the expense of the weapon. But I have a reload here, and this particular reload is 100 grain, 800 feet per second, approximately about 140 energy. It's 100 grain is a copper wash. The primary, the diameter is 356 diameter because it's 1/1000 of an inch larger than a 355. The primer is a Winchester primer, and it's the gunpowder is used as a 231 Winchester 231, and the grain is 2.6 grain. Overall length of the bullet is 970. Maximum overall length of the bullet is 984. That's according to the manual. I personally used this setup, 970, Winchester 231, 2.6 grain, and 100 grain copper wash. The reason for that 100 grain copper wash is that in New York City and in most of the ranges you cannot use just lead. I mean, as you fire the gun, what happens is as it recoils back, it's gonna hit you the lead. So I don't recommend that. That's why I recommend the copper wash. Usually the copper wash is actually under about 1,000 feet per second. Can you put it 1,100 feet per second? Yes, but then it becomes it depends upon the quality of the copper wash. So anything under 1,000 feet per second on a copper wash is not bad at all. So let's look at it a little bit further. So because of that, it does qualify as a home defense. Yes, under these circumstances here, it's 100 grain, it will qualify as a range gun. Now, does it qualify as a hunting backup? Well now, in state of Florida, it probably will qualify as a backup gun. The reason for that, if you're going to, for example, Alaska, don't even think about that. Because you will probably need a 44 Magnum, and not just only a 44 Magnum, but you will need what is known as a Magnaport on a 44 Magnum, so you have less recoil on it. The Magnaport usually be called back in the 1970s, where they ported the gun, so you had less recoil, which we will get back to a little later. So, does it qualify as an armed security? Well, this is basically, in the state of Florida, minimum armed security. You can actually use the 380. Okay, because of the minimum of the 380 armed security you can only use, yes, it does qualify. The reason for that is a 90 grain, 1,200 feet per second, and a 288 energy that it produces. But I also have some scribble here. So we're going to look at this little scribble here. So that does qualify. Does it qualify as a CCW, concealed carry weapon? The answer is absolutely correct. It will qualify as a CCW. Now, let's look at it for a second. Of course, this is empty. So let's look at it. Let's say that the individual is very sensitive with the hand, and they have difficulty manipulating actually the handgun. Okay, what happens? What we can do is very simple. We have 50 feet per second, and we have 250 energy. Where does this come from? Well, what we can do is we can actually cut a port right here. We can port it. Now, I spoke to a highly respected gunsmith, Superior Gun, and they said they only seen only one handgun, the 380 Cheetah, with a Magna port, or that is ported right here. That means you have approximately about 20% reduction in recoil. That's your minimum. Can you go over 40? The answer is probably yes, but it is the gun is actually might not be able to set up to 40% reduction in recoil. Now, when you put a port in here, what's going to happen is you're going to have approximately about 50 feet per second reduction. And you're going to have, because of that, you're going to have a reduction in the energy. That's going to be about 250. So, does that still qualify as a CCW or as an armed security for individuals who are actually sensitive to recoil? The answer is yes. Would that qualify as a range gun? They're absolutely correct. Would that qualify as a home defense? Yes. Does that qualify for a hunting backup? Well, I would like to have that 50 feet per second. Okay, but yes, it will qualify even if you are going boar hunting, because the 22 caliber will take down the wild boar. So what happens? The recoil is going to be relatively mild, 20% milder. Now, because of that, what's going to happen is as follows. The recoil is going to be milder. Let's say 20%. You can get it much higher, number one. Number two, it's going to be louder. The gun is actually going to be louder. The reason for that is that the escaping gas is going to come. So what happens up in the bore? So what happens with that is you're going to have a higher recoil. So that's another point. Another point is also going to be that you're going to have a much more violent recoil. In other words, when a gun cycles, as it comes back, what will happen is going to be a much higher recoil back and more violent recoil. Not by much, but as you're holding the gun, when you're holding the gun, the recoil is going to be absorbed by your arm quite easily. Another thing you can do if you have very sensitive problems with the trigger. This particular trigger is relatively smooth. Now, on a single action, it's even smoother. Can you make it a little bit more sensitive? I don't recommend it, but the answer is yes. You can make it smoother and lighter. For that, you might have to change the hammer spring, which is right here, maybe about a pound or two. But then what happens is it depends upon your need. It may be just a little bit too light. And for me, it would be absolutely light. Now, if you are very sensitive to recoil, the answer, you might need it. But it can be done with with this particular gun. This particular gun, you don't need to throat it because it's already throated, and I looked at it and it is an absolutely fabulous gun. Now, since these numbers here, 1,200 feet, 90 grain, this number is actually coming from a Buffalo Bore website. Now, with that in mind, on all four areas, home defense, range gun, hunting backup, armed security, CCW, conceal and carry a weapon, the answer is yes. Absolutely yes, it will qualify as a all-around handgun. This is large enough handgun also that when you're holding it in your hand, it does have authority in your hand because of the size of it. I used to work with a gentleman, he was 375 pounds. And he was 6'1", he was also a power lifter. Now, I used to get into his face and I used to tell him that, like a little rooster, that, oh, the only reason that I don't smack you around is that they're going to arrest me for child abuse. Well, everybody was laughing around me and he was also smiling, but because of his hand, he would not carry a 38 special, especially with the J frame and the 5-shot 3-inch barrel, whether it's a pistol, whether it's a pencil barrel or whatever the barrel is, because they had it in a pencil barrel and they had it with a much thicker barrel, with a heavy barrel. So he would not carry that. He would carry a 6-inch 357 Magnum. The reason for that it just disappeared in his hand. So if you are a small individual, yes, this particular gun looks authoritative in your hand. And don't forget, this is a 380, number one. Number two, it does have 1,200 feet per second, and it does produce 288 energy. The expansion I do not know. It's unknown from this particular gun. So with that note, thank you very much for listening, and yes, it will qualify as a all-around handgun. Thank you for listening and have yourself a wonderful day.